This is GrantTalk, hosted by Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch and author of The Queen of Grants.
Hi, everybody. I'm Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com and author of The Queen of Grants, From Teacher to Grant Writer to CEO. And I am your host today on GrantTalk. I am so pleased to have with me Katie Reusch of YSA Youth Service America. And today we're going to discuss what happens to a grant once it's submitted and what grants are available. This is a national organization, and they provide a lot of support to youth and youth programming. So, Katie, tell us briefly what your organization does.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Libby. It's a pleasure to be joining the podcast today. So YSA Youth Service America, we have been around since 1986. We were really an evolution from the Roosevelt Centennial Youth Project, and our work has really been defined on engaging youth in meaningful service projects, both as volunteers, but also as designers and leaders. So our work, we engage youth through grants, of course. We provide resources for youth directly, but also for schools and organizations who are looking at implementing youth-led service. We have different days of service that we participate in throughout the year. We have our own day of service, Global Youth Service Day. And then we offer different recognition programs because youth doing service is important. So we want to make sure that we're telling their stories and amplifying their voice to ours out.
So I see that you do days of service connected to 9/11.
We do. So we try to connect to days of service as, I guess we can call it on-ramps or starting points, especially for youth for whom volunteering in service is a novel concept. So 9/11 Day, MLK Day in January, and then Global Youth Service Day in April. We kind of look at these as tent poles, as great starting points, because young people and adults across the country are going to be kind of reflecting on the impact of these days and taking action to support their communities. So it's a really great place for youth to get started, but it's also a great place to tell the stories of the work that they're doing and how they're making these incredible contributions to their community.
I like it because you're making the youth research what happened on those days, right? Who was MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., and what happened at 9/11 and who was impacted? And there were so many stories that came from there. We don't want our history forgotten because we learn from our history. And you awaken that, especially there are some children that, they weren't even born yet, right? So you're awakening what needs to be done. We have a value system in America that needs to be instilled in all our youth. Positive values.
Yeah, and even kind of connecting the historical lessons. So the idea of, with 9/11 Day, bringing community together. How can we take the direct aftermath of 9/11 and kind of seeing how as we as a country came together to support one another, how we learn from other people, how are we seeing those trends and those cultural experiences? How are we seeing those in today's world?
I was at 9/11 afterwards. I was running for city council, and that was primary day in New York City, 9/11. So whoever voted, it didn't count. They voted again 2 weeks later. And my campaign was like, what do we do now? They were so geared up from the get out the vote. And yet my campaign was in Staten Island, New York, and we lost so many public servants because a lot of the police and fire would live outside of the 4 boroughs and live in Staten Island, which was more like it was more of a suburb.
Yeah.
Even though it's one of the boroughs. And nobody knew what to do and how to help. People were donating blood that couldn't even been used, right? Because they didn't have any people that survived, except the people that got out, right? So after 9/11, patriotism within the country was unbelievable. Everybody that could find a flag, put it on their car, put it outside their house. Everybody was an American, and we were all unified together. And hopefully we'll never need another tragedy like that to awaken it. I hope we awaken it very soon, given what's going on in the world. But your grants awaken it within children and youth, and that's great. Really great. And I'd like to see more of that. I'd like to see the projects that come out of it. Could you tell us some project that stays with you?
Sure. I always have a difficult time thinking of projects that stay with me because in my role, I'm directly working with our youth. We typically have anywhere between 175 and 250 youth grantees alone each year. So you have anywhere between 175 and 250 different projects. But there are a couple that stand out. One of the young gentleman that we worked with his older brother as well. And I remember talking with the younger brother and his mom. And he was saying that how one day he was on the school bus coming back from school. I think he was maybe 13 or 14 at the time. And there were some younger students on the bus and they were trying to read a book. And I think they were sitting next to him and had reached out being, hey, can you help me? What is this word? What does this mean? Can you help me sound this word out? And so he actually started a peer mentoring program of kind of middle school and high school students with elementary and then middle school students to do buddy reading. And it's a project that has been going on for I think 4 or 5 years now at this point. And
Wow.
he is now getting ready to graduate high school in a couple of weeks because he's up in the Midwest and he's looking to continue it while he goes to college.
So how much did he get for his initial program?
So he was one of our Hershey Heartwarming Hero grantees, and I believe his grant was for $500.
And that just set everything in motion. Right?
Yeah, he used it to purchase books that they could use through the buddy reading program. Part of his experience was he was hit with a major challenge immediately because he was awarded a grant right as the pandemic started and students were going into lockdown.
So how did he read with students?
So what they did is they leveraged technology and were doing peer-to-peer readings over Zoom. Some of it evolved into homework help, especially I look at how schools are teaching math nowadays, and I would be completely lost. I know my parents would be completely lost as well. When I was taking calculus, they were like, "We can't help you with this. We're not gonna handle these derivatives or whatever this is."
Right.
So it kind of evolved a little bit past reading, although that was the core. And so they were able to kind of cover things like books for the students. I think they also did notebooks and pens and paper to help them kind of write about and journal their own experiences to kind of help with the reading comprehension as well. Promotional materials.
So youth can apply to you directly.
Yes. The grants that we offer we consider them to be in kind of two different camps. One are the grants that are directly for youth. So we ask youth to come up with a project idea. One of our grants is hunger specific. So it needs to be related to ending childhood hunger in their community. But we ask them to come up with a project idea, let us know what inspired the project, what the community need is, how they're going to go about recruiting their peers, and then kind of course, what that project idea is.
Do you find that you get grants from you see that they're all in the same class in a school, that a teacher takes this as an assignment?
In some cases, yes. So the age range that we work with is 5 to 25. So we do get college students applying for these grants as well. And I know there are a few schools that we work with, schools and universities, where they have a student leadership course or a course that's focused on service learning. And sometimes, usually what we'll get maybe 3 or 4 from students from the same school because it might be kind of the end of semester project where they have to come together in a group, a team of 4, 5, 6 students and put together a proposal. So sometimes we do see multiple proposals from kind of the same school or the same organization.
They can create young grant writers. Unbelievable. Really. And the other project?
And then the other element would be our grants for schools and organizations. The schools or the organizations do need to be tax exempt, but we do not require 501c3 status. And so for these schools and organizations, they are essentially kind of bringing together a cohort of other organizations of youth. So for example, one of the grantees that we've worked with in the past is an organization grantee. They have a youth leadership council. And so they work with the members of the council in more of an advisory role. And then the students within the council then plan individual projects at their respective schools. So you could have kind of one grantee, but they're having projects led by youth at 15 different schools across the state.
I'm thinking of camps.
Yes.
I'm thinking of a camp where you have children coming from all over and you could have a youth project right there. What happens with religious schools? Are they eligible to apply?
They are, yes. Yes, so religious affiliated schools, religious affiliated organizations, churches, mosques, synagogues, what have you, are all eligible for our grants, as are, we have government entities, so governor's offices, mayor's offices. Oftentimes they might have a specific youth council, advisory council. They have also been awarded grants of ours in the past as well.
And we get lots of calls from faith-based organizations asking, and municipalities, what grants are available. So this definitely has to go into those categories as well. I love what you're doing, Katie. What would you tell applicants that they should think about when they're applying? Tips, tricks, whatever.
Sure. So I think probably the first and probably most important is to make sure that you read through the requirements of the grant and especially the eligibility criteria. So for the most part, our grants are specific for youth, schools, and organizations that are within the United States. A few things kind of contribute to that, but I would say that that's first and foremost the most important. Make sure that you're able to align with the eligibility criteria. The worst feeling I have is when I see a grant and I'm reading through it and I realize this person doesn't meet that eligibility criteria, and I feel really bad because I know applying for grants is a time-consuming process. I would say another thing to keep in mind would be, especially for youth who are applying for grants, be aware of what's on your plate. We know youth today are busier than they've ever been.
Right. We don't want them to overextend themselves because then nothing's successful, right?
Exactly. And I know, especially with our youth grant cycle, most of the projects, the primary requirement is for projects to take place in the spring, but the spring has a lot of things are going on in the spring. You have your finals, you have ACT and SATs, you have your AP exams, you have holidays, sports competitions.
Right. So start early. If you want this to happen, start in the fall so that you're ready. And then in the spring, tighten it up. And that's it. One question I have for you is, if they win a grant one year, can they reapply the next year?
Yes. So our grants are not once you've been awarded, you're not eligible ever again. Many of the grantees that we have received grants multiple times. We actually have some organization grantees who were once youth grantees of ours.
Wow. So you stay with them, and that's great. I love what you're doing. I hope that the youth are hearing it. And if you want to hear more podcasts, you need to subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple, as well as all our social media channels. And Katie, when this is published, you'll be able to see it as well. And we'll have some 4 reels after that. I'm so grateful for you to join us. And I hope the youth hears this. I hope they hear it and they start applying and that they're able to be young grant writers. That's really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a wonderful process. It's a wonderful skill to have. And as you're doing service, you're building additional skills that you don't necessarily say, I'm going to, go think critically this weekend. No, you say, I'm going to go help my community by volunteering at my local animal shelter or creating meals that will then be delivered to people in assisted living, almost like a Meals on Wheels type of program.
I love it. I really do. And I hope that everybody hears us and continues and to look on GrantWatch, find the grants. And Katie, how have we helped you? How has GrantWatch helped you?
GrantWatch has always been really great in sharing our opportunities, whether they're opportunities for youth or whether they're opportunities for schools and organizations. I know your team has recently shared our newest grant opportunity, our We Serve to Remember 9/11 Day grants, which fun piece is this grant is open to youth and schools and organizations. So it kind of takes those two camps and brings them together. Your work has been instrumental in making sure that we're able to reach an even wider audience because we have a sizable audience, but, it always helps to have friends that are, willing to take the time and the energy to help amplify that.
Your grants are national grants, and GrantWatch is, at this point, an international organization. So I hope everybody finds it. And of course, we'll put the link below. So thank you so much, Katie, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Libby. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about our work. And again, thank you so much for all of your support with our grant programs.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to GrantTalk, powered by GrantWatch. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this GrantWatch channel. Please consider subscribing to GrantWatch.com, and you can find the book, The Queen of Grants, by going to GrantWatch.com/book. Thank you again for spending your time with us.